the NCAA tournament resumes on Thursday with 4 Sweet 16 games. We're going to get to that in a bit, but I want to start with the big headline from the past 24 hours, and that's that John Calipari is returning for a 16th season at Kentucky. UK Athletic Director Mitch Barnhart announced that decision on Tuesday night. Deadleg, first question for you. Is this the correct decision for UK?
I don't think it is the correct decision for Kentucky. It seems unavoidable that it's led to this point. I did report on Monday that Calipari expected to stay, and Mitch Barnhart did not want to fire John Calipari. I do think the situation we have here is what I speculated on the night that Kentucky lost to Oakland. I truly believe that the only reason John Calipari is the coach at Kentucky is because it is too expensive to pay him out of his contract. And in talking to two sources in the past few days, one of the biggest sticking points here is a lot of that money would have to come from the Kraft family, which is among the biggest donors around Kentucky's men's basketball program and Kentucky athletics. And I was told Joe and Kelly Kraft they're just not going to pay John Calipari north of $30 million, no matter how you decide to, if you were to decide to pay him that money and how it would get paid out over installments or whatever. They are not going to let him walk away with all of that money, much of it being the money that they would have to put forth to do it. And so because of that, Calipari and Mitch Barnhart, they met on Tuesday, and Barnhart confirmed what felt inevitable. I mean, basically, they had those two men who don't have a good relationship and had not talked in months, I was told, like had significant talks of any kind. They had to avoid going into a room together and then coming out fuming against each other, and that did not happen. So they dodged any kind of significant disagreements to worsen the situation, and now we will have to wait and see on what changes come from Kentucky's program. Staff changes feel frankly inevitable, but as one source speculated to me, the one thing that we had to kind of wait and see on here, and we don't really truly have clarity as of Wednesday morning, is, you know, would Cal go and sit down with Barnhart, and Barnhart basically says, you have to either just flip your entire staff or half your staff or do all this, and Cal says, I'm not doing it. And if I don't want to do it, what are you gonna do? Fire me? Then fire me. Give me my money. We don't know that actually happened, but that would be one thing that could worsen the situation. We'll see. Things can't stay the same. Calipari went on radio Monday and basically owned up to a lot of stuff. The fan base is still furious over this, much of it anyway. And this feels lame duckish. That's all. Kentucky could well be a ranked program next season, be a good team, get a 2, 3, 4, 5 seed in the tournament, and maybe it can even make a Sweet 16 run, and that'll be good. But I do think that Kentucky's best days are behind it, and this is delaying the inevitable. And so Kentucky probably made the decision that it had little choice but to make, but that doesn't necessarily make it the right decision. And now Kentucky fans kind of have to just sit in this and just kind of ride it out. Maybe you get a good season or two still out of Calipari. I mean, he had a really good team. It's letdown after letdown after letdown, and we await to see what changes come within the Kentucky program. But I was told this one last thing by sources, like there will be stuff that like we aren't privy to, but just in terms of the day-to-day of how they run the program, how Calipari has chose to do A, B, C, 1, 2, and 3. Some of that stuff is going to fundamentally change, with the idea that implementing those changes will lead to a healthier culture around the program and hopefully more success when it matters in this month of March.
Isn't it always going to be expensive anytime you move on?
Yes, but it does drop down. Like, it's not going to be above, as I understand the contract, it's not going to be above $30 million in perpetuity. So yes, it always will be expensive. I agree. I mean, but I'm told this is the reality of the situation with paying him that much money. That is if it was $12 million, John Calipari wouldn't be the coach of Kentucky.
Okay, I'll accept that as the truth. It's not like people have never paid this type of money to remove a coach before. Texas A&M just paid twice as much to remove a football coach. So when the two biggest arguments against making a move right now are money and, well, we'll lose the recruiting class. Well, anytime you move on from John Calipari, it's going to cost a lot of money, perhaps not this much, but a lot. And you're always going to, the recruiting class is always going to fall apart. So you're just pushing off the inevitable. And I really do think that's what they're doing here. They're just pushing off the inevitable, because his next bad season and or his next bad NCAA tournament will almost certainly be the end of it. And not too many people can flourish under that type of job pressure. And it's not even that it might end after next season or the season after that. It's that every time something bad happens between now and the end, it will feel like a bigger than normal situation. Like every time they lose a recruit to Duke, it'll feel bigger than normal. Every time they lose a non-league game, John Calipari will trend, and Kentucky fans will say, we should have done this last year. Why didn't we do this when we should have done it after the loss to Oakland? Like, that's going to be your life going forward. And it doesn't mean, I know you said you don't rule out that they could have some good years under John Calipari. I don't rule out that they could win a national championship under John Calipari. Like, he's always going to have the players. He's always had the players. So it's not unimaginable for me that John Calipari could go out in the transfer portal, buy through name, image, and likeness what looks like one of the best teams in the country, and then have them looking like one of the best teams in the country next season. Like, that's a realistic thing. But the larger question becomes, what do you do when your fans no longer believe in the guy leading the whole thing? And that's where I'm totally understanding of the theory that they should go ahead and do this now, move on. I also get why they're not. And I guess the simplest explanation for why they're not is because it's easier to just stay together. You know, think of it as a marriage. When this type of money is involved and these types of years are invested, it's probably easier for these people to just stay together than it is to divorce under these circumstances. And that's why they're going to stay together, at least for now. I'm not here to predict how it goes, because, you know, even though John has his shortcomings, it's never talent, or it's rarely talent. So I'm assuming he'll have another super talented team next season, and then we'll see what he does with it. But if he doesn't do great with it, then it'll be real miserable in Lexington and throughout that state.
Two other things on this. One, it was speculated to me, and I think this is accurate speculation, that Mitch Barnhart, who should be, and I think in Kentucky he probably is, but he was the one who approved this contract for Calipari. And so Barnhart does deserve plenty of scrutiny for even allowing it to get to this point. Rarely, and I mean rarely, not never, but rarely, is a lifetime appointment style contract the move for any university to go to. And I would say even more so now than ever, given the climate of college athletics. And no matter the stranglehold you may think you have on a certain school, a certain conference, a certain sport, it can put you in a spot you don't want to be in quicker than you might realize. And so I think it's derelict of duty of most athletic directors, and frankly, probably presidents that sometimes might get a little eager to want to stick with their guy, you know, through thick and thin after however many accomplishments. I get that. You can putting it in that spot. I just don't think it's good. So Barnhart's also on the hook here, and I know Kentucky fans are going after him as well, because frankly, the fact that it is in this spot, and you do have a situation between two men who just don't have a great relationship, like it falls on him as well. But it was speculated to me that Barnhart, I don't know how long he envisions himself being the athletic director at Kentucky of his own design or not, isn't all that eager to fire Calipari and be the one tasked with getting a new coach in there. And who is that going to be? What, you know, everything that entails with that, just something that's not something that Barnhart is overly eager to go through. They're going to have to go through it eventually, but right. I think that these are also factors that played a role and led us to where we are here today, this morning, yesterday, with where they are. And I mean, I get that, but eventually John Calipari is not going to be the coach. There's going to be someone, and I had seen this point tossed around, and I do agree with it. Yes, it got, you know, unacceptable for Kentucky standards at the end of Tubby Smith's career. Check that versus what Cal has been. Oh, by the way, Tubby didn't last this long. Now the contract was different, whatever. And Gillespie, it was a disaster. But Kentucky, it's Kentucky, man. Like they have had multiple. How many coaches have they had win a national championship? 4, 5. I mean, they have had success over the decades. They've done it in the here and now. They've done it in the 50s and the 60s, the 70s, and in the 90s. So that I don't entirely buy, but I do. But whether I buy it or not is immaterial. I think that those are also factors that led us here.
Mitch Barnhart, 64 years old. I think he's closer to retirement than most people probably realize. And that's another reason why it's easier to just stay together. If you're Mitch, if you're like, all right, can I get one? Can next year be good? Because if next year's good, then that means he's going to get a following year. So if year 16 is good, then year 17 is good. And can I get out of here by then? And then let this be somebody else's issue. Somebody else can be the athletic director who fired John Calipari, and somebody else can be the athletic director who makes the next hire. Because if I do that now, then I'm that guy. And what if Cal then goes somewhere else and wins a national title, and my next hire isn't working out so well? Well, then that's part of my legacy, and I can just push all that down the road. So that's another reason why this is easier. To your point on lifetime contracts, I think they're almost always dumb, and especially at places like Kentucky and North Carolina and Duke. Like, why do you have to give somebody a lifetime contract? Why not just say, hey, man, this is as good as it gets, but if you ever want to leave, knock yourself out. Just be like, hey,
Yeah.
This is if you ever want to leave Kentucky for somewhere else, knock yourself out. We don't think you will. And if you do, it'll probably be good for us, because we'll be out of it. If the alternative is a $33 million contract, it'd probably be better for us not to have one of those. So I don't understand why it some of it's just press release stuff. It's because you want your coach to be able to say, I have a lifetime contract.
Yeah.
But whatever that's worth, it ain't $30+ million when you end up in a situation like this. Just some bullet point stuff, and then we'll move on. So next year will be year 16. Through 15 years, John now has 4 Final Fours and 1 national title, but he's been stuck on that stuff for a while. 0 Final Four since 2015, 0 Sweet 16 since 2019. He missed the NCAA tournament in 2021, lost to St. Peter's in the first round in 2022, lost to Kansas State in the second round 2023, lost to Oakland in the first round 2024. To your point about Tubby Smith, the great years weren't as great outside of the national title one, of course, but the bad years weren't as bad. Like the bottom was higher for Tubby. Never, whatever John's worst years are, they're worse than Tubby's. And Tubby got pushed out after 10 years. The year that John lost to St. Peter's, he had the National Player of the Year. The year that he lost to Oakland, he had 2 top 10 picks.
He had the National Freshman of the Year. I mean,
yes.
Reed Sheppard, we'll see if he wins it for us, but he has won a National Freshman of the Year award already. Yeah.
How about this? Since the last Final Four in 2015, John Calipari at Kentucky has coached, take a deep breath, Jamal Murray, Tyler Ulis, De'Aaron Fox, Malik Monk, Bam Adebayo, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Kevin Knox, P.J. Washington, Jared Vanderbilt, Wenyen Gabriel, Tyler Hero, Keldon Johnson, Emmanuel Quickley, Tyrese Maxey, Johnny Juzang, Brandon Boston, Oscar Shibwe, Ty Washington, Bryce Hopkins, Kellen Grady, Cason Wallace, Antonio Reeves, Rob Dillingham, Reed Sheppard, DJ Wagner, Justin Edwards, Aaron Bradshaw, just to name a few. In that 9-year span, 0 Final Fours, 1 missed NCAA tournament, 2 first-round exits to St. Peter's and Oakland. If you're wondering how we got here, that's how we got here. And I will say this, and then we'll move on. The thing that would frustrate me most if I'm a Kentucky fan, because I do gather, I didn't listen to every word, but I did read every quote I could find. I do gather that John mostly touched on the right points on that radio show on Tuesday night. He seemed to handle it well with humility. He knows he's up against it. He knows how people feel about him connected to that program right now. And he seemed to handle it well. The thing that would frustrate me if I were a Kentucky fan is that he is constantly acting like he just figured something out that like everybody else figured out 5 years ago. Like last night on radio, and even after the game to Oakland, the loss to Oakland, he's saying things like, well, we just got to look at it. Like, can you really take all these freshmen now? Or do you have to get older? Bro, we said this. Like we've been saying this for a few years now. And then it's like early in the season when they're playing faster and shooting all these threes. And he's like, yeah, the thing people have to realize is like the game has changed. It's like, dude, people realized that 5 years ago. Like, what are we talking about? That's the part. Do you pick up on that as well?
I do. Yes. I mean, some of it is just kind of a slightly boilerplate, and he's just trying to talk his way through it. But yes, there's definitely a little bit of that, GP. Yes.
Yeah. So I get the Kentucky fans' frustration. I wish you guys the best. Hopefully it'll go well, but these things tend to end a certain way.